Hello guys, it's Lou Dorian again, and I'm back to discuss some more root fundamentals. And today we're going to discuss a different root fundamental. We're going to talk about relationship repair. And we're also going to talk about the difference between forgiveness and relationship repair, which I think oftentimes is a misconception between people, and it can create difficulties in letting things go because people could feel like forgiveness means that I'm letting someone off the hook. I'm going to let them back into having a relationship with me. I'm going to allow my boundaries to come down. And that's a I would say pretty common misconception of the idea of forgiveness. And we have people kind of fall on different sides of this. We've got some therapists who believe forgiveness isn't that important. We've got some that believe it's very important and even attempt to perhaps be a little forceful with forgiveness, which is also never a good idea. And so, that is something to kind of look at from a perspective of equal balance in a certain way. So we're going to discuss more about how forgiveness is done here when it comes time for that. But really, I'm here to focus on relationship repair and outline that so that it also brings context to understanding the difference between and how much more involved relationship repair is than forgiveness, which forgiveness is really about the self, and it's about cutting the bonds that keep us tied to a traumatic event and allowing ourselves to free ourselves from that. That's what forgiveness is really about, and that's why it's really about the self. And so it isn't as involved as relationship repair. Relationship repair requires 5 very concise steps, really. It's very structured. And, you'll see different relationships where you can see people kind of go through these patterns. I think it could be really common in romantic relationships where there's a transgression, there's a betrayal, and you'll see a couple where the relationship will kind of go through the friction and the arguments and maybe even separation for a time. And then there's an apology, and the apology is enough. And someone goes, oh, okay, the apology, I felt like that apology was real. I'm going to let them back in. And then there's a repetition, a pattern of behavior. And you can see people kind of go through these patterns. And I would say that's because the 5 steps are not followed. The 5 steps of relationship repair really help to set a solid foundation so that that type of events don't take place again. And so that it's structured in a way to really prevent creating those patterns or continuing and extending those type of patterns. So these are this entire idea really comes to me again from my martial arts mentor Roy Harris. Really exposed me not only to the organization of information in this context, but exposed me to the full idea of what relationship repair really is, because I was one of those people who went through plenty of those types of patterns of forgiving people only to have them kind of do the same type of behavior again. So the first step in relationship repair is the authentic apology. And if you've had experiences with apologies, and I think many of us have, there's a lot of crappy apologies out there, a lot of sorries that really aren't too sorry. And there's a guy out there with a channel, I forget his name, he talks about this, how sorry is kind of an overused word. It doesn't seem to really take responsibility or give the impression of a lesson having been learned. And that's the only way that someone's really going to stop a behavior anyway, is to be able to learn a lesson and be able to communicate to you that, oh, I learned a very real lesson from that, and here's why I won't do that again. So a lot of apologies out there lack authenticity. They lack conviction. They lack real feeling, and so they don't really amount to much. So the first step in relationship repair really needs to be that fully heartfelt, authentic apology. And within that apology, there has to be a complete outlining, a full outlining of all of the actions, events, and words that were part of the betrayal or the transgression, and nothing can be left out. And in some cases, you'll find when people can go through these, sometimes the perpetrator, the transgressor will say something like, oh, no, it's too painful. Why should we bring that back up? Why should we rehash this? And they don't want to address what they've done. They don't want to look at what they've done. And it's too painful for them. But that's just a cop out, because whatever is painful for them is more painful for the victim, and is definitely not an acceptable excuse. They need to outline everything that they did and be willing to fully face it themselves, because they made the victim face it, and that's part of the process of really really stating a fully heartfelt apology. So once that's done, it is far from over. The next step in relationship repair is going to be the atonement phase. And my interpretation of atonement really has a couple nuanced layers, right? So atonement is really this show of how valuable the relationship really is to the person who is trying to get back the relationship that they've damaged. And so I'm going to use an example. Let's say that I stolen $5 from someone. Well, I often tell people, that just paying back the $5 is not enough at all. It's going to require, this is an arbitrary amount, but it's going to require at least paying back, let's say $50. And it's not because I just stole the money. It's because of the betrayal of trust, right? It's because of the damage to the relationship. It's the disrespect to the bond we had, that now repairing all that is far more than just paying back $5. Restoring that trust is going to take a lot more effort. But also on top of that idea there that I'm, as the transgressor, is putting in this effort and making a show of how valuable, that the relationship is more valuable than their self-centered urges, and that it was a mistake at the time that they made and now they want to make up for it, but that also they're investing in the relationship. It's an investment. And I see now that they're investing so much that it isn't worth reenacting or reperpetrating that action, because now they've invested so much in that action is worth much less than what they've put into the relationship. And so now I can feel much more confident that they've put skin in the game, that they've got a lot to lose now, and that they're not going to do that same type of action. So that's the atonement phase. Now, once we're going through the atonement phase and we've had the authentic apology, we have the authentic effort we're seeing. Now it switches back around to the victim's responsibility. And in this side of things, the first thing that comes up, and in Roy Harris's words, he says, bring God into this, bring God into it, and ask for his strength and, his wisdom to be able to navigate this difficult time. And so I agree with that. He's very Christian. I'm more indigenous in beliefs. And so I still see an overguiding spirit that is pushing us towards increasing awareness, is the way I would put it. And so I agree with his statements, but it presents problems for people who might be atheistic or possibly even agnostic in nature. How will they address that same thing? And I would say that you need to, on some level, go to a deeper place within yourself and look at humans as very complex and having a subconscious side to themselves, a side to themselves that they don't understand in their own self, and all of the factors of trauma and damage that can happen to a person, not just from abuse, but from dealing with a really rather abrasive and toxic society, because we definitely have a very damaging and toxic world that we've created as humans for a number of reasons. We'll be talking about that in future episodes, and why mental, emotional, spiritual skill sets are important just to navigate and sustain health in our world. So if you're able to do that and then reach in maybe even to the quantum side of, quantum mechanics, physics, to say, hey, we're an interconnected world, we're an interconnected universe. And, because of that, there is an importance in addressing this other being, this other human being, even though they've shown themselves to have these character flaws or made these type of mistakes. And so maybe some ideas on how to address it. I'm not atheistic, but I want to speak to a larger audience, and I want to include everyone as much as possible, because it's, mental health is such an important aspect of our lives, and relationships are enormously important to mental health. So once you've kind of gotten to that part where you're able to go, take a deep breath, I'm going to move forward with this relationship repair project, and I'm able to have the strength now and the centeredness within myself to go on that journey with this person. Then the next part is, because the authentic apology has happened and the atonement has happened, is that now oftentimes when someone has, betrayed you or done some sort of bad action in this way, we'll ruminate and constantly play over and over in our heads, what happened and what took place. Now it's up to us. It's up to our responsibility as the victim to change our thought patterns, to stop thinking about it. When it comes up in our heads, think about something else. Call a friend, go for a walk, do an exercise, do some, breathing meditation, do something to change the channel, if you will. Stop thinking about that. And then the next step beyond that is to not let the events or words that took place live on the tongue, and that is, to use Roy Harris' words there, to not talk about it, to not talk about it in public, to not talk about it in private, to not bring it up, to let that story sort of die and go into the past. And you know, even if asked, about what took place, you can say, I really don't want to speak about that because I've learned, those lessons. I learned that lesson, and talking about that doesn't bring value to anyone anymore. And that's a way of showing honor and respect to the transgressor and showing that you really are interested in relationship repair in thought and in word. You are now really working towards relationship repair. And then we're going to go to action. Then from there, you might go to the point of doing something nice for this person, going out of your way to buy them a gift or do some sort of favor for them or something to help them. And you do that to show that you've really fully and utterly forgiven them and you've matured and you're ready to move on. And so that is all at the responsibility. This is the third fundamental step on relationship repair, and it's really up to you as the victim to follow those steps within that third step. The fourth fundamental step in relationship repair then goes back to the transgressor and the perpetrator, and now they have to maintain a certain sensitivity to the sore points, the sore spots that might have been created by what they've done. And this usually lasts for the period of the atonement phase. Now, atonement, is an interesting thing because it's not fixed and it depends on what happens. So in really severe cases, atonement may last a lifetime. And that's where I'm truly in awe of someone like Nelson Mandela and Desmond Tutu's work in South Africa, because what they got people to forgive and begin to work on relationship repair with was stuff that most of us consider to be unforgivable and impossible to repair a relationship. And yet he was able to get people to go walk down that path and actually work towards relationship repair. But in those instances, atonement never ends. It's lifelong. Maybe it's longer than lifelong. There are things that you can't ever take back in this world. So really powerful stuff there. So during the phase of atonement, however, the person who is the perpetrator needs to be sensitive to that there may be some sore spots created by what took place. And so let's use an example. I'm going to use an example of, say, a couple where there was some infidelity, some cheating happened. Let's say it was a man. Let's say a man cheated, and now he's gone through the apology. He's atoning. He's really wants to restore the relationship. It's valuable to him, and he's made it clear. And the couple is working on it. Now he needs to be sensitive to any type of one-on-one time with women. Being sensitive, being really transparent about interactions at work or after the workplace, spending time with women, who he's with, what he's out doing, who else is with him, making a show of being very transparent in those interactions, right? Maybe being really even transparent with what he's doing with his phone or social media stuff, things like that, that's showing, and in a way that's really, if you could see it, it's really rather linked to the atonement phase. And so it's being very sensitive to those sore points. And something like that can't be, has to be a finite period, because otherwise it just becomes invasive. And as we talked about in the, liberation as being really the core skill side and fundamental aspect of love, you don't want this to become controlling because something like this happens. So there is an ending point of that level of invasive, quote unquote, what would you call it? Signing up for a type of surveillance, right? So, and allowing it and being open to it to show, hey, I'm being, sensitive to what was created here. So that's the fourth root fundamental of really, being sensitive to sore points. Fifth and final step in relationship repair is going to be, restoration of the relationship to its original condition of trust or full reconciliation. It's a very difficult step for those who are, the victims usually. It could be very hard. It takes a lot of maturity, a lot of personal growth, and a lot of strength in order to restore that relationship and really go to that full level of reconciliation. A lot of maturity and self-growth there to do that. And oftentimes maybe people just don't have that within themselves at the time. And sometimes, of course, due to different reasons, circumstances, desires, or even death, maybe that's not possible at that point. But those are the 5, fundamental steps to relationship repair. And it's very involved versus forgiveness. Forgiveness is different. Forgiveness is just the self, and it's trying to release one's ties to the traumatic kind of event, the bonds that tie one to a traumatic event, and trying to release that trauma. That is what forgiveness is about. It is not relationship repair. They intersect. Forgiveness and relationship repair and relationship repair intersect, but they are not synonymous with each other. They aren't equal to each other. Not the same thing. I mentioned earlier, sometimes therapists might say, well, they may not think that forgiveness is that important. I disagree. I think forgiveness is very important for processing past trauma and releasing those bonds that bind us to that past and that event. And so it really is about the self, but it also is not letting someone off the hook. It's not absolving them of culpability or responsibility. It is certainly not the same. It's not intended to mean that, oh, now I need to lower my boundaries if I need to place boundaries in place. It isn't any of those things. It's purely to let go of the trauma of the event and be able to let go of any type of hatred or malice that might be held within the heart towards the other person. And so sometimes people will also approach it from the other side and try. Some practitioners and therapists I've seen be a little forceful with forgiveness, trying to force someone to forgive or really trying to lead them to forgiveness. And that is not how forgiveness works. You cannot force forgiveness. You can only forgive when it's truly authentic and you're ready. And in that case, I'd like to use the analogy of, I had a lot of work experience in masonry work. This would be similar if I was going to take a wall down for whatever reason. I wouldn't start at the bottom bricks or blocks and try to remove those. That wouldn't make sense because there's all this pressure. There may be some sort of adhesive that's holding them in place. And so that block isn't going to go anywhere at the very bottom of this wall with perhaps even thousands of pounds, sitting on top of that wall. So what you would do then, of course, is take the top blocks off. Well, I've had, after hundreds and hundreds of hours of work with myself and with others, I've found that you can reach traumatic events within some sort of regression or type of emotional process work, and then begin to attempt a forgiveness step and find that, oh no, they're not ready. Then you go back and in subsequent and other sessions find that maybe address a lesser issue or address some other issue in a different area of their life, and they do some forgiveness and they're able to authentically and then move on and do several of those in different areas. And then, after enough of these sessions, maybe you come back to that original issue that was too much for them to really forgive at that time. And then you find, oh, wow, they're ready to forgive now. So that is, about relationship repair in relationship to forgiveness. And it's really fundamental to the 5th root, fundamental of mental, emotional, spiritual skill development and healing and health, because relationships are very important to humans. We're a social creature, and so we have to develop skills around that. So wanted to share that with you guys. Hopefully that was a good one. All right, talk to you next time.